Jesus answered them, "Do you now believe? Behold, the hour is coming, indeed it has come, when you will be scattered, each to his own home, and will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, for the Father is with me. I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Hello and welcome back to episode 12 of Lessons Learned. We did not just get done arguing about what number it was because 12 is just a little too high to count. I'm Dillon.
I'm Evan.
And I'm going to actually, I forgot to keep the verse up. That verse that we opened with was John 16. It was 31 through 33. And it was actually how our pastor decided to end the sermon that we had on Sunday. And I thought it was a fantastic quote. I know you watched the online service, but what'd you kind of think of the overall message?
I think it was good. It just mostly reaffirmed stuff for me.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it wasn't anything terribly new.
Sure.
And maybe that was because during our college youth group, we went through this section of John.
Yeah.
I think that's why.
Sure.
But it was really good.
No, I thought it was really good. It was definitely, I think for me, it was a little bit re-enlightening on the idea that the things that God, Jesus, has overcome is like inconceivable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, Jesus overcame death. That's pretty inconceivable.
Yeah.
Like so inconceivable that people don't believe it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, if that God can overcome death, then me not being able to do something is kind of a lousy excuse to not ask for help. You know?
Right.
I think that's just kind of where it's at for me.
Yeah. I also realized I want to get a new mug.
Yes, our pastor, when he was given the sermon, he was talking about Bible verses that you see a lot that are everywhere, that are very like, oh, my heart, it feels warm and fuzzy because it's a comforting verse. And kind of the reason we started with that verse was because that was the verse he ended the sermon on, and that was one that he put on a mug. And the reason he did was because it's comforting, but it's not warm and fuzzy. It's not like, it'll be okay. It's like, no, the world's going to hate you as the world will hate me. But I have overcome everything. I will overcome, at the time, he says, I will overcome death. And at this time, he's overcome the world and will continue to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So it's comforting in a more impactful and I guess kind of grit your teeth kind of sense.
I'd say more realistic.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the other Bible verses aren't realistic, but they are out of context. And
yeah,
Christianity isn't about everyday optimism.
Yeah.
There is optimism in like the end.
Oh, for sure.
Of like where everything's going.
Yeah.
But on the earth, no, it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Because of us.
Yeah. Well, ultimately because free will.
Right.
And people make a lot of decisions that I guess remove the free will of others ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I actually picked that verse. Evan didn't pick that one, but you made it seem like it kind of tied into what we're going to talk about from the book today.
I thought it would.
All right. So I'm curious now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in recent episodes, we just finished going over these primary frameworks for myths, including the hero, like the exploratory hero, the great mother, and the great father. We talked about the chaos before time, where there's chaos and order together as one in the Ouroboros. And yeah, so now we're going to go into the chapter's called Apprenticeship and Enculturation, Adoption of a Shared Map.
And this is chapter 3.
Yeah.
We've moved on.
Yes.
This is very cool. I'm very excited.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
So he starts
All right.
off with a page. What is this? A page in well, it's pretty much just barely over a page.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a summary of what the rest of it's going to be.
Okay.
So we're not going to go over that just because it's what the rest of the chapter looks like.
Yeah. So.
But super condensed without any context.
Uh-huh.
So you have to take every sentence and like think about it pretty much because it's a summary of basically a paragraph or more.
Are you going to read all this?
No.
Or any of them?
No, I was just saying how he started it.
Okay. I really thought you were going to make my brain just like grind gears for a minute.
No, I mean, I guess I could talk about, he introduces like the analytics standpoint that he's coming from, where he says that like all tendencies or systems or traditions ultimately become useless. It's like you need the one that's best situated to the time that you're in, the time and place that you're in.
Yeah.
And he says adoption of this analytic standpoint allows for a certain moral relativism conjoined with an absolutist higher order morality. So the moral relativism isn't good.
Okay.
Because that's pretty much, there is no truth.
Mm.
And it's just like up to the people. It's like truth is subjective.
Yeah.
So that's not good. But what I care about is the sentence after that, where he says, the particulars of a disciplinary system may be somewhat unimportant.
Mm.
The fact that adherence to such a system is necessary, however, cannot be disregarded.
Okay.
So what he's saying is, it doesn't matter the specifics of whatever system or moral system you're looking at. Like the particulars of that don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
The important thing here is the fact that we have to adhere to some sort of system.
Sure.
And I thought that was something that's good to keep in mind because we super disagree. But I wrote, it's super important to emphasize that he said the particulars may be somewhat unimportant because it shows that he's like genuinely exploring here and he hasn't come to a conclusion per se. He's still trying to figure it out. So that's just something to keep in mind. Even if he makes claims here, he might not be totally on board with them. Yeah. Because he's just actively exploring with us.
You know, I think it's really interesting that he says both there isn't a truth, but then also says like structure is important. Yeah. Like it is important to follow some type of societal structure, some type of hierarchy, and whether or that, and I know he's kind of discovering this with us, that perhaps the specifics aren't that important, but that overall the structure is important, but then goes, there isn't like an ultimate truth, which is something that you and me talked about, that I kind of had a little revelation over the weekend about like,
trust me, we'll get to more of that.
Okay, cool. I was blown away just like understanding like individual perspectives and the truths that we all have. And yeah, if we're going to get to it, I don't want to dive into it too
I think
far.
there's some better connections.
Okay. Cool.
So next he begins kind of the actual chapter with talking about these different stories that are common to just storytelling, I guess. Okay. And the stories we've heard, so some of them are the story of benevolent nature, threatened by the forces of the corrupt individual and the society of the machine. The plot's solid, the character's believable, but what he's saying is that the mother nature is also like the malaria, mosquitoes, and all of these bad things that are in nature. So that fails because it's not fully portraying what the Great Mother would be. Right. Then he talks about the story of peaceful and orderly tradition, which is undermined by the incautious and decadent. And that's also familiar. That's like the king that's stuck in his ways. So then he crumbles. Oh no, I think that's... Oh, it's saying that chaos is, I think, introduced by the incautious, and that's where it goes bad. But what that's ignoring is that the forces of tradition themselves can be blind and concern themselves more with their own stability than with the well-being of those subject to them. And then he talks about the story of the brave pioneer going with a plow in hand and making something stable out of the chaotic world. Like the settler kind of idea. Okay. And like he says that ignores like the bad side of that story, where we all know the story of the benevolent individual, genuine and innocent, denied access to the nourishing forces of the true natural world, corrupted by the unreasonable strictures of society. So basically, there's all these different stories, and he thinks that some of these have their adherents because it's reassuring to believe that everything bad stems from without rather than within.
Mm-hmm.
So, like in the last one, the guy's all innocent, but he was corrupted because he didn't get the like nourishment that he needed.
Right. Okay.
So it's not his fault.
Right.
And that's exactly Rousseau. It's part of what he talks about in his autobiography, is that I was good, and then I was corrupted because this guy pretty much told me it would be good to go steal some bread. But I did it because I thought it was good. So he's like, society is corrupting. Humans are naturally good. And so this is him explaining all of these different ideologies.
Sure.
So do those track with you? You understand those?
I understand.
And how they're all incomplete?
Yeah.
They're all missing something?
I mean, it was hard to kind of keep up with every single one you said,
right,
but
sure.
For the most part, I was able to acknowledge like what was going on.
Okay.
Also, I have, I'm sure you saw me put something in my mouth. It's just a Hall's cough drop, so I don't cough. And you might hear it rattling in my teeth because I can't help it. And I'm sorry. But I just wanted to point that out because I didn't want anybody to go, what is happening? It's a cough drop.
So, ideologies
are
kind of a big part of this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you'll think this is interesting.
I'm already really intrigued. And I already also have issues with the last ideology.
Okay.
And I know where you think I'm going, that like he says like humans are good by nature and we're corrupted by society, and obviously like as Christians like we're all sinners.
And just he's not agreeing with that.
Oh, he's not.
He's just giving a list of like all these different stories that we're familiar with, but that are all ultimately incomplete.
Gotcha. My issue with the last one is that not that we're all good or bad by nature, but that it's not your responsibility. It's not on you to take responsibility for somebody twisting your perspective. I disagree.
What do you mean?
Well, the idea that like you think this one way and somebody comes along and goes, oh no, don't do that. And they're trying to get you to do something that you ought to not do. And then you do it and you go, well, that's not my fault. They told me to do it. Oh. I think that's such a lazy argument.
You just don't like Rousseau? I don't like Rousseau.
I think that's a dumb ideology. Like, I think that's like a bad way to look at it. Because it's basically saying, I don't want to take responsibility for my actions.
Yeah.
And I mean, while you can acknowledge that you may have been manipulated or that you may have been gullible in the situation, or that you may have been like worse off and desperate, it doesn't excuse that you did do the thing.
Right.
You know, and I think it's up to you to take ownership and acknowledge why it happened and then prevent that in the future. You're smiling and I'm kind of curious.
So I'm going to skip ahead because this was funny.
Okay.
He's talking about Rousseau. He says, of course he worried, I don't remember who he is. But he says he worried that any attempt on his part to shape the behavior of his son would interfere. Oh, I think this is Rousseau. Would interfere with the natural development and flowering of the child's innate potential. Oh, this is one of his clients. He goes through a whole story about one of his clients that he like was not a good guy.
Okay.
But he wanted to change because he had a son. And he was really worried about like interfering with the development of his son. So he just was like trying to leave him alone.
Okay, you have to start reading this again. You interrupted yourself too many times.
I know, it's fine. That part doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
I was just trying to figure out the context as I went.
Oh. Thinking out loud.
Yes. So that's pretty much a Rousseauian idea. Is like he would develop on his own in the right way, then that he'd be good. So I don't want to interfere with that. So what Rousseau says, that he quotes, "With what simplicity should I have demonstrated that man is by nature good, and that only our institutions have made him bad?" So that's exactly that thing, is that the institutions are corrupting and society's bad.
Mm.
And then he added this, which I think is him trying to be funny. He says that is the Rousseau who repeatedly placed his own children in foundling asylums because their existence was inconvenient to him. And then in parentheses, he writes, and we must presuppose detrimental to the flowering of his intrinsic goodness.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
I like this Jordan Peterson.
I thought that was
This is
funny.
my new favorite Jordan Peterson, dude.
I like that one. Yeah, he talks about all about intrinsic goodness and then just throws his kids in an asylum.
Yeah, I think that's the epitome of like, I'm not going to take responsibility for my own actions.
Right.
I also think it's a good representation of like ideologies and how strongly you believe in them. Because it's like the idea of like being a Christian is like you come to faith and you're saved because you have faith in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do works based on your faith. You know Jesus is there. You know he's going to help you, support you, and carry you as long as you're obedient and do his will.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we have really strong faith in our religion, right?
Yeah.
But then there's other people who have an ideology and they're like, no, it's real. It works really well. This is good. And then do not follow it at all.
Right.
Because it impedes with their like own selfish desires, or it impedes with something. And then I think it's funny, and I really think it's ironic, because it's like, so you want me to believe in your ideology, but you have so little faith in it that you yourself won't live that life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The irony.
It's pretty funny. So let's dig in on ideologies then.
Yes.
Since they seem
I'm so excited.
to be a big deal. So he says, ideologies are powerful and dangerous. Mm-hmm. Their power stems from their incomplete but effective appropriation of mythological ideas. So they take these mythological ideas and they can use some of them in an effective way.
Mm-hmm.
Their danger stems from their attractiveness in combination with their incompleteness. So they're attractive, but they're not complete.
Right.
Ideologies tell only part of the story, but tell that part as if it were complete. This means that they do not take into account vast domains of the world.
Okay.
So it's the easy example is communism, because so let's see. It was attractive because it meant that like you wouldn't have to do work or anything. I mean, you'd have to do work, but like you're taken care of. Like your well-being is guaranteed. It's incomplete because it doesn't take into account human nature and how that is not just inherently good.
Right.
But it acts like it's telling the whole story, even though it doesn't even touch on human nature, and so it's not taking into account humans.
Yeah.
And its idea.
And maybe we talked about this last episode, or maybe you and me just talked about it, but like communism, and there's other things, but like it's like the whole spreadsheet junkie for like cars.
Oh,
and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. We talked about that last episode.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, it totally works in theory, and then it just doesn't work in the real world because
there's something that they're missing.
Right. Or like there's real world things that will shift and then all of a sudden it doesn't work. Like, oh, this one bike makes like 20 more horsepower. It's totally going to win. And then it rains and the other bike's got better like traction control, or it's just got a lower torque. So then on the line, you can actually get going without burning out your tire. So it's like, I feel like that's really similar with like,
and that's something he does talk about later too. With ideas of the Father.
Okay.
Is that the stories that we follow have to be adaptable.
Yeah.
To work optimally.
Right.
Like you have to have some sort of tradition that regulates what you're doing, but you also can't just be stuck in that.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing where like it's important to know the different horsepowers and that sort of thing, but there's ultimately going to be factors that are going to be different last minute.
Oh yeah. And that's why if I kind of know this because I have a friend who's really into it, but drag racing is really hard because if it's like 5 degrees hotter outside than you had anticipated, the tar on the road is a little stickier. So you need to be cognizant of that on your launch, what tires you use, what PSI. You need to be aware of like how is that going to affect like how hot the engine runs. It's actually like a wicked huge science.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool because it's like you can't walk into it with a theory. You have to like walk into it going like, I hope this is the ideal condition, but like the conditions can be
Mhm.
whatever, and I need to be able to act upon those conditions.
And here's why.
Yes.
He has a good follow-up for
Good.
why.
Yay.
He says the ignored elements conspire, so to speak, as a consequence of their repression and make their existence known in some undesirable manner. So what he's saying is, like with the communism example, they ignored human nature, so human nature made itself known
Yeah.
in like the extreme repression.
Dude.
They're like, you forgot about that.
Yeah.
So
It's like
that's what happens.
It's like when you're on the drag strip, you didn't calculate for rain, and then you don't move because you're spinning over in the rain.
It makes itself known.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, wow, that's really interesting.
It's cool.
Man, that's really cool. That in of itself, I feel like can be applied to so many things in life.
Uh-huh.
Like that's its own offshoot of like a concept of an ideology. Like it's not like a full thought or anything, but like that can be applied for so many things. Like if you don't take care of your own health, it'll make itself known. It'll be evident that you're not taking care of your health, and you start getting sick, and you can't stop being sick. And
or if you ignore the fact that you have to take care of your car, it's gonna stop working.
Yep, it'll stop working. If you ignore that you have to put gas in the car, or that you have to change your oil, or if you ignore like doing schoolwork, even though it sucks. Like a lot of these things suck to do and suck to like be cognizant of, but like it goes back to episode 1.
That's another part of the ideologies being attractive, is that they're easy.
Yeah. And it goes back to episode 1. It might be easier, but it depends on where you place your importance. If you place your importance on having a good and working car, then even though it kind of sucks to change the oil and fill up the gas all the time, you do it with less of a fit or less of a negative attitude, because the important thing is that the car runs, gets you to work so you can make money. If it kind of sucks to go to the gym every day and eat healthy all the time and not waver from that, and get a good night's rest, and, you know, take time for yourself and make sure your body's healthy.
Right.
You can be like, oh, this sucks. I'd rather just like eat junk food and not have to worry about it. But if you place the importance on being healthy and that good feeling of being healthy, then everything else just kind of slots itself into place because you have a new valued importance.
Right.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying, minus the stuff where he like, the mythology, like that, the second chapter really was just kind of like, I was like, oh boy. But like this book really ties itself in a really nice bow throughout its course.
Yeah, well here,
end.
For tying itself together, he's about, with this next quote, he's about to tie together the second chapter.
Okay.
And like how it's useful.
Okay, that's good.
So he says the beneficial aspect of the natural environment, the Great Mother, is therefore properly viewed in light of its capacity to arbitrarily inflict suffering and death. The protective and sheltering capacity of society, the Great Father, is therefore understood in light of its potent tendency to tyranny and the elimination of necessary diversity. So he's talking about the good version and the bad version.
Right.
And then he says the heroic aspect of the individual is regarded in light of the ever-lurking figure of the adversary, arrogant, cowardly, and cruel. So I know we didn't agree with all of his exploratory hero, mother-father stuff, but like that totally makes sense now, because the whole point of what he was doing is saying you have to recognize that there's the good chaos and the bad chaos, and the good order and the bad order.
Yep.
And the good way to go about balancing those and the bad way to do that.
Yeah. Man, honestly, and this is like such a bias because like we know Jordan Peterson's a genius, but I'm sure there's plenty of people that are like, oh, I don't know who this Jordan Peterson guy is. Like, I don't know how value I can take his word, but like, if he had just opened with that, I would have been like, yeah, he's right. And then we would have moved on.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have had to have the whole, like, oh, well, he misunderstood the Bible and he got this wrong. And then I was like, but like that, yeah, no, yes.
Yeah. But I think it's important that we understand why he's saying it.
Yeah.
Because then you can agree on you can agree on the same conclusion, but you're coming at it from two different points.
Yeah.
Which is important to flesh out.
I guess.
As not fun as it might be.
I guess.
But
we've had this conversation so many times off camera, and this is the conclusion we always come to. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I guess you're right, but like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
So
It's not the funnest, but I also like disagreeing with stuff. So
yeah, but you're the way you are.
so it's gonna feel like we're jumping around a little bit, unfortunately, since I skipped ahead to the Rousseau thing. But to follow up with the Rousseau part and about things being easy,
Yeah.
he says, after he makes a dig at Rousseau, he says, anyway, the fervent hope of every undisciplined person, even an undisciplined genius, Rousseau probably, is that his current worthlessness and stupidity is someone else's fault. If in both cases it is society's fault, then society can be made to pay. This sleight of hand maneuver transforms the undisciplined into the admirable rebel, at least in his own eyes, and allows him to seek unjustified revenge in the disguise of revolutionary hero. So what he's saying is every undisciplined person is just hoping and looking for that opportunity to say that his worthlessness and stupidity are someone else's fault. So then he can say, I'm this way because of you. I'm going to go be admirable and fight against you.
I have so many things to say about this, but the first thing that comes to my mind is actually from Eminem, and his song Rap God. And he, and I can't remember the exact words, but he's talking about how everybody that hates him is waiting for the second he slips up so they can be like, I was right all along, and they can just jump on him.
Right.
And that just like, that really tied him. I don't know why that stood out for me.
Well, I mean, all they're doing is they understand that they're, like, to use his terms, worthless.
Yeah.
But it can't be their fault.
Right.
So it's got to be, they had to be right about Eminem.
And that's kind of what Eminem says is like, the haters are forever waiting for this day they can say I fell off. They'll be celebrating.
Yeah.
And then he says, after that, he says, there's a bunch of cussing, but, right? Eminem, ladies and gentlemen. But, basically they say that they can make music, and then he's like, yeah, elevator music.
Yeah.
Because they're not.
Because it's not good. Yeah.
Right. So, but man, yeah, that can, oh man, we see that a lot, don't we? That idea that, like,
it has to be someone else's fault.
It has to be somebody else. Man, Matt Walsh has done a lot of videos about people like crying in Starbucks because they're just like, I can't do it anymore. And he's like, you're in college. Yeah, you're supposed to work a crummy job while you're at college. Like, no, you're not supposed to be in college or before college and get like a full salary career. People work really hard for that. So working at Starbucks kind of sucks. Yeah, that's the point. That's the idea. Toughen up. Stop. Don't sit in the back crying. And then the guy goes on to be like, 2 people didn't show up, and then Matt kind of blows up, and not like angry, but like Matt Walsh style.
Right.
And he's like, so wait, 2 people didn't show up, and you're in the back, so now there's only one person out there taking all the orders while you're in the back crying?
Right.
Dude, like.
Yeah, but he's not worthless because it's
everyone else's fault.
Yeah.
I feel like I have really conflicting ideas about, I'm really acknowledging that you can't really pick an extreme, which I know is something you've seen me kind of struggle with. I'm like do or die, but I'm really starting to go like, man, you really can't pick like an extreme. Cause like,
in terms of what?
Well, on one hand, you can't be like, oh, well, I'm dumb because society failed me, school failed me, this education system failed me, so I'm just not smart, and that's not my fault, so I don't have to do anything because they failed me.
Right.
That's wrong. That's on you, dude. You got to figure things out for yourself. You have to learn. You have to do that. That's something we talked about. But, and then Evan handed me a book to read.
Yes.
Evan actually has a library in our apartment. Like there's a whole bookcase, and it's like filled with books. And I was not like shocked, but I was like, yeah, okay, this makes sense.
Yep.
Anyways, then there's the flip side of that coin. Okay, so no, it's not the education system fault that you don't know anything. That's on you for not stepping up. But on the other hand, like, especially in something we've talked about, is the education system's really failing us in regards to like teaching us important valued things. There's a lot of pushing these ideologies that, mainstream media is really trying to push. And for some reason, that's getting into the education system. And I know we've talked about it, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I mean, the education system isn't educating. They're pushing in ideologies and et cetera. And we won't dig at it for too much. But my point is like, you really can't just blame everything because it wasn't easy. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you do need to acknowledge where things are failing people or failing society. And I think it's such a hard balance because, like, until you kind of do both or see both and experience both, you really have a tendency to pick a side. Mm-hmm. Like, man, do you have a tendency to just pick a side?
Yeah.
And there's so many things I feel like fit that. Like, oh, like, you should be able to do whatever you want because it's a free country. Okay, but, like, there needs to be rules because, like, if you just do literally whatever you want, that's anarchy, and that's not a free country, because now you have the power to remove somebody else's freedom, which is contrary to, like, a free country.
Right.
So it's like, then you reflect on, like, the ideas of the founding fathers and the construction of our country, and you kind of, like, have to take a step back from your own biased perspective and really go, man, this really is, like, a pretty well balanced system. Mm-hmm. Like, this is really not overly biased in any direction. This is really truly about the freedom of the peoples. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty impressive that they did that.
That's controversial, I have you know. I just finished 2 American history classes. That's controversial.
Okay. Well, you
can't escape it.
Well, so
yeah. I'm going to let you know.
Yes.
We've gone through maybe 3-4 pages.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. So just heads up.
Okay. Well, how long does it... Well, how many pages do we usually go in half an hour?
I don't know. But this whole section is 16 pages.
Oh.
So we're like a quarter of the way there. I think that some spots are better for discussion than others. But
whoa. Don't copyright me.
Okay, so he goes on to talk about, he has a really long quote from Nietzsche.
Oh, okay.
We're not going to go, it's literally more than a page.
What?
It's long.
He just quoted a whole page.
Yeah. It's small font too. It's probably 2 full pages at normal font.
Oh man, I wish I did that in any of my, like, research papers that I wrote for school.
It's not a bad idea.
And then when they were like, you're supposed to write 5 pages, just quote, like, 2 pages and be like, well, every word here was valuable because, and then just break it all down.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think this was a dissertation, but they probably wouldn't be too happy with it if it was.
Turns in a novel for a dissertation.
Well, so the important thing from this, the Nietzsche quote, he's talking about the philosophy of apprenticeship.
Okay.
Which is pretty much talking about you have to adhere to some sort of moral structure or moral system, or really any sort of cultural system, which is inherently going to be restrictive.
Yeah.
But you do that so that then you can learn how to act and become more free in the process.
Yeah.
So that's the philosophy of apprenticeship. He talks about Christianity quite a bit. That's the focus of this quote.
Oh, okay.
He talks about how Nietzsche didn't like, or like he's seen as just anti-Christian.
Which, such a good Christian quote.
I think he didn't like the way that the church was. He said he viewed, or he despised the intolerable discipline of the Christian church, but he still saw it as a necessary and admirable precondition to the freedom of the European spirit. So he's like, yeah, I don't like this thing, but it's like too controlling and stuff, but it's definitely doing good things.
Sure.
Which is kind of complicated, but he's a philosopher, so why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, Socrates and stuff.
Yeah. So he talks about the importance of this idea of apprenticeship, where you need to fit into some structure that can tell you how to act when there's so many unknowns until you can learn about the world more.
Gotcha.
So he says a child cannot live on its own. Alone, it drowns in possibility. Yeah. The unknown supersedes individual adaptive capacity in the beginning. It is only the transmission of historically determined behavioral patterns and secondarily their concomitant descriptions that enables survival in youth. So he's pretty much saying that kids need some sort of structure to live because there's just too much that's unknown for them.
Did you just not know a word?
I knew that I would mess it up when I read it earlier. So
that's so brave of you. I don't think you've messed anything up. Not like you haven't
I
stumbled,
totally.
but like
I was gonna, okay.
You've stumbled, but like I've never heard you struggle to say a word. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean,
I'm just letting you know, he spent some time talking about like the child.
Yeah.
And the importance, the transition from childhood to adolescence also.
Well, I think you can look at, I know high schoolers aren't really like children. Like they're not adults yet, but like they're not children by any means.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, think about being in high school, and maybe this was just a me thing, but I feel like a lot more high schoolers relate to this than people would like to acknowledge.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at somebody who's like 16 and say, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? It's daunting as heck.
Yeah.
Like there's got to be some type of structure to help them figure it out. And that's what frustrates me the most about high school is that there's no structure in high school to help you navigate your passions and figure out what you really want to set your heart on and chase for not the rest of your life, but a long time, the majority of your life. I think it's so unfair to put that on, a 15-year-old. Mm-hmm. And like, I was a kid that like my parents didn't go to college. So like, what the heck was college? And like some of my friends in the 8th grade were like, yeah, I want to go to this college. And I'm like,
whoa,
what?
8th grade.
Oh, there were some kids I think the youngest person I personally heard say they knew what college they wanted to go to, and they did go to that college, was the 6th grade. They knew what they wanted to do. They are actually in that field at that college. I think they graduate this year.
Well, good for them.
I guess so, but like, how much of that do you think is told to them, and how much do you think is like that's what they're actually passionate about?
I mean, I'd imagine if they're graduating, they probably are into it at this point.
At this point, but I mean, how many people do you know actually do that? It's like few and far between. So my point is,
well, I mean, it would be like becoming a astronaut or something, or like a race car driver. Everyone wanted to do it, but like imagine actually sticking with it and making it happen.
Well, I wanted to be a rock star.
Exactly. So imagine like if you had the parents or whatever to support you and pursuing that, like you totally would have.
Oh, dude,
but
I owned a guitar when I was 8. If I actually stuck to that and I actually got the lessons that I like I actually cried because I asked for lessons and I was told no. If I actually got the lessons, dude, I'd be shredding on guitar. Do you know how many years that is?
Yeah, I know.
An obscene amount. Like we wouldn't be here right now. I'd be a big rock star.
Right.
We all just...
Yeah, you don't need to... Yeah.
All the songs, they come to my head.
So it's interesting that you brought up high school because he talks about...
That's the next quote. In high school.
Yeah, he talks about adolescence next.
Oh, okay.
So he says that when you're a kid, you identify with your parents. They're the ones that provide that framework.
Yeah.
For you to be able to survive against all the unknown stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I mean, he says you can see it in children that are separated too early from their parents, that they're like more depressed and anxious and they have like physical breakdowns and stuff because of exposure to too much unknown and the incorporation of too little cultural structure.
Wow.
So that was really interesting. But so your parents provide this structure for you when you're a kid.
Okay.
And he says successful transition from childhood to adolescence means identification with the group rather than continued dependency upon the parents. So adolescence is the time where you're figuring out how to identify, with a group. It's like a group of friends or just kids your age in general, and you're relying on them for like social structure more than your parents.
Huh. Not to get too dark, but like as a parent who had malicious intent, even if you weren't I guess, like really truly cognizant of that, if you had some type of innate understanding of that, you really could screw up your child for your own personal gain.
Oh, I mean, JP talks about that in multiple places.
Yeah.
The mother that holds on to her child forever.
Yeah.
That's exactly that story.
Yeah. Or the father that makes themselves such a big hero that, like, without the father and the kid's life, that they'll just fail and crumble.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's all, like, equally pretty tragic to do to your kid.
Right.
Because it really screws up their understanding and development and growth into, like, adulthood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. So that's why he's talking about it, is because that's a really important developmental stage.
Yeah. That's so unfortunate that people do that they willingly have kids and then do that to them.
I'm looking at the next quote real fast to see if it's worth it.
We need to come up with some waiting music. So, that way, like, when you're reading quotes, I can just kind of, do a ditty.
Okay. That one didn't. It was fine. He's just talking about the importance of, like, you have to kind of partially reject that maternal protection.
Yeah.
At some point to develop and get the skills on your own.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. That's the hard part about being a parent. Not that I'm not a parent or anything, but from my observation as somebody who is really into being a young man, like, I've seen that so many times, parents that struggle to acknowledge that they can't parent their kid.
Yeah.
That because it's not their kid anymore. Like, they'll always be the mother and father, but at a certain point, it's like,
different.
Yeah, it's a completely different relationship. I see a lot of parents struggle with that, so that's probably...
Well, I was about to say, like, this is stuff that my mom certainly would not... I mean, she agrees with it, but it's not stuff she likes to hear. That she has to, like, give up on.
Yeah. Your mom is so sweet,
having
though.
Little kids.
Your mom is so sweet. She's so funny, though. Because every time she interacts with you, like, there's such an interesting dichotomy, because, like, you're very, like, ready to, like, just adult talk with her and, like, share the things you're learning and studying and stuff. And then, like, when like, you get, like, a little sick or something, she's like, "Aw, poor buddy."
Yeah.
And I think that's so interesting, because, like, 5 seconds ago, you just had, like, this really profound conversation about, like, an article you were reading, and you had written an essay about it. And your mom, I know, she's, like, trucking along to, like, figure it out. But then, like, at the whole heart of it, she's like, she still sees you as, like, her little baby.
Yes.
I think that's so cute, though.
So
and
cute.
Funny.
Yeah.
I put you on blast there for a second.
Did. It's okay. One thing she would not like to hear is this one. Probably most mothers would not like to hear this. This means that the growing child eventually comes to face problems that cannot be solved, indeed may be made more difficult by involvement of the beneficial maternal.
Yeah.
So I just thought it's not that profound or anything, but...
No, but I mean, like, you can see it all the time. Kids that are coddled, they have no...
Yeah.
They have no calluses, for lack of a better term.
Sure. They shouldn't be wearing Carhartt.
They should not be wearing... If you wear Carhartt and you haven't actually done a job regarding manual labor, take it off. Please. Take it off. That's the most frustrating. You know why Carhartt's so expensive? Not because it's a designer company. It's not Gucci. It's because they're made extra strong. All the coats and stuff, they're made with many layers of very strong material. So you don't cut them when you're, like, out on the field doing, like, I don't know, manual labor.
Yeah. I know you're passionate about your Carhartt.
I don't even wear Carhartt. I wear t-shirts and I suck it up and cut my arms up real bad. But I just, man, it's not, you know the guy who did Dirty Jobs?
Mike Rowe? Yeah.
There was a designer company that released jeans that had mud stains on them. So you could buy jeans with mud stains.
Ew.
He was so mad about that because he's like, look, this is really infuriating because the rich look at work as ironic. Oh, look, I'm like a worker. My jeans are dirty. It's so frustrating because it's like, I get the whole holes in your jeans. I know it's a trend. It's been a trend for so long. But like, you know what you do when you like do manual labor and you get holes in your jeans? You wait until they're so bad and then you go, gotta get new jeans. But people buy those jeans. They buy the jeans with more holes than that guy threw his old jeans with.
Right.
Like, and I know that's not really how it's viewed, but like, come on, like Carhartt, really? It's not even a pretty shirt or a hat or boots or a coat. They're not pretty. They're like average looking.
Yeah.
So I don't get it. It like the only way I can conceive it is that they look at it as ironic.
Uh-huh.
And that is so infuriating. Because it's not ironic work. Like, how do you think you have a house?
This is really what we should be focusing on here. This is the important stuff.
I'm sorry you you brought it up.
No, I think it's great.
You brought this up.
I think it's funny.
You know, maybe
We just like, this is the most passionate you've probably been about anything
because
on this podcast.
I think it just stems from like the whole, because we're talking about coddling and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like, who do you see wearing like Carhartt stuff who obviously has not done manual labor?
College students?
People who are overly coddled.
Yeah.
Because you can see the college students that are walking around in Carhartt and you're like, he has a job after this that is very exhausting. It's usually because their hands look like leather. They aren't like super skinny or really overweight. Like, they're pretty filled out and they have no craps to give. Like, they don't care. They're wearing jeans and a t-shirt and they're good with that. And they're dirty. Mm-hmm. They got dirt on them. Like, if you're wearing it and you haven't done manual labor, like, I mean, to each their own, but you're buying it for irony. That's why you're getting it. It's made for a purpose. And I don't like that people are wearing things that are made.
You should talk to my boss about this.
It's like getting your grandma a sports car. The sports car is for the guy or girl who likes going fast, likes a cool car, right? Grandma has no business driving a sports car when she does 60 and a 70. Grandma doesn't need the Corvette. That's silly. Why does she have it?
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is.
Yeah.
If you go to college and your degree is, let's say, science. You're not in the field. Maybe you are if you're a geologist, but you're not building a building. You're not welding.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you wearing Carhartt? You crunch numbers all day. If you're an accountant and you're wearing Carhartt, if you paint paintings.
I think you're just listing all the people who shouldn't be wearing Carhartts.
If you don't do manual labor, stop it.
Yeah. I think JP would agree.
Yeah.
So
it's not even like a badge of honor. It's just like, again, it's ironic because that serves you no purpose other than like a standard jacket would, except that it says Carhartt and everybody knows what Carhartt is. So the only conclusion is that like you wear it out of irony. Don't laugh at
You're so impassioned.
Yeah, because
I know. It's been well demonstrated. So we've had some really good stuff.
We've had some great conversations
about this section. There's been some really good quotes in here.
Yes.
So let's ruin that.
I don't want you to blow by anything just for the sake of putting this in one episode. If it becomes 2, that's fine.
Oh no, I'm chilling.
Okay.
I'm trying to keep it interesting.
Oh. Am I gonna be upset for a different reason now?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Do you even get upset about this stuff at this point?
I might be now.
Okay. Well,
I mean, the whole Carhartt thing really.
Right.
My blood, it's boiling.
So can you please tell me?
Yes.
What is your understanding of baptism?
I'm leaving.
You can't. You can't.
Okay. You and me had a heated discussion about
I know.
this.
I just want like
I talked about it with Bill.
I want a simple summary.
I talked about it with our friend.
Yeah.
And guess who he agreed with?
What?
Me.
I don't care.
Okay. Sheesh. Okay.
Just give me a basic.
Baptism
Yeah.
is something that God calls us to do.
Sure.
Jesus calls us to do.
Okay.
And it's a representation of your acceptance of faith in Christ.
Okay.
And there's a little more to it, and there's symbolism and how God washed the earth with the flood and washed it free of sin, and it's kind of a symbolic way to wash you free of sin. But ultimately what it is it's you have faith in Christ, you've accepted Christ in your heart, and the baptism is the representation of that in a outward expression, essentially.
And I see it obviously slightly different,
Right?
as it's a renewal of the spirit,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Or it's like,
Our friend said, the old man lays down and dies, and the new man is born.
right. So, but the point is, that's what we see it as.
Yeah.
Those are pretty similar.
Don't. You can't.
No. Because you're gonna like this. Okay.
You sound like Randy when from South Park when he's talking to the market,
I don't remember.
what's the Whole Foods? He's talking to Whole Foods, and they're like, "We want a Whole Foods in our town, South Park, Colorado." No. Wait.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
No.
Baptism is spiritual birth or rebirth, as opposed to birth of the flesh. Fair enough, right?
Yeah.
I can't even get through it. Okay. The font of the church, which contains the baptismal water, is a symbolic analog of the uterus.
No.
Which is the original place that transforms pre-cosmogonic chaos into the spirit-embodied matter.
Is there more?
No, but notice. I mean, so actually I went and found the original. He has a citation there. I went and found the part where the original citation is talking about it.
Good.
I can say it to you if you want.
I would love to hear this.
Okay. Okay. So it's Eric Newman's The Great Mother, and it was published in 1955.
Okay.
The symbolism of the vessel appeared, and he's talking about like literally just cups and stuff, something that hold water. The symbolism of the vessel appears even at the highest level as the vessel of spiritual transformation. Although Christianity did its best to suppress it, this matriarchal symbolism has survived, and not only in the cup of the Last Supper or in the mythical Grail. The pre-Christian plunge bath signifies return to the mysterious uterus of the Great Mother and its water of life. The plunge bath, which in Judaism has retained its ritual significance down to the present day, became in Christianity the baptismal bath of transformation that, as a late work of art still shows, is a return to the primordial egg of the beginning. For this reason, the baptismal font is a vessel of transformation. It is not only the crown of the tree of life, but also the spring of life, which, through the descending upper water of the Holy Ghost, becomes an alchemistic vessel of renewal. So I don't think...
Thanks for watching episode 12 of Lessons Learned.
I don't think we mentioned uteruses or eggs or chaos once.
Remember when I bring this up like every episode for a little while? You picked a blue comforter because blue represents calm, and you like calm when you sleep. So that's why blue comforter... Cup represents woman. is the most incomplete, incoherent thing I think I've heard in a while.
And it's talking about vessels, because I think I didn't read all of the context from that book, but it's also talking about like the womb is a vessel that life comes out of.
Yes, sure, if you want to look at it that way. Yeah, you know what else is a vessel? That candle, but only after you burn the whole candle, and then you have a cup jar. It's a vessel. Boom,
Jar.
vessel. Hey, want to see me make a vessel? Check it out. Look at my vessel.
Yeah, I see your
You know
point.
what this represents? Woman.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun connection. So
What?
let me just 1-2 punch you with another one.
Give him that old 1-2, Bobby. Pow,
And
pow.
this one's more serious, but it's just as incorrect.
It's not. It's less serious.
It is more serious.
It cannot be.
What do you mean?
We brought up South Park.
Just get ready.
Okay.
All the rites of rebirth or resurrection and the symbols that they imply indicate that the novice has attained to another mode of existence, inaccessible to those who have not undergone the initiatory ordeals, who have not tasted death. So he's pretty much saying that all these symbols of rebirth and resurrection are showing a person going through ordeals to get rid of some mode of existence, for a better one. Okay?
Okay.
Incorrect. Here's what I wrote. Jesus is not telling us to undergo an initiatory ordeal. In fact, it is quite the opposite. Jesus went into death so that he could save all of us. To think that he wants us to do the same is contradictory.
Well, not only is it contradictory, I'd argue it's blasphemous if you think that you could die the same way with the same effect Jesus did.
Right. And like what I added is, I see how if you think the story is only an abstracted moral lesson, that Jesus represents voluntary death and resurrection, and that we should all take part in that to like get to better things, like better versions of ourselves.
Right.
But that's absolutely not correct
Yeah.
when you actually understand the story.
Yeah.
So,
And then something else that you had said in the previous quote was that like the water in which you're baptized in has to be at the church.
mm-hmm.
Our church baptizes you in the Colorado River. How neat is that?
Yeah.
Guess where it's not? Guess where the Colorado River is not? In our church building.
Yeah.
It's not in the building.
It's really interesting that he talked about it being the pre-cosmogonic egg, and that we're going back to that when we get baptism, because that doesn't even make sense. Like, that's not talked about at all.
No, it's not.
So,
oh man,
we're getting it all today. We're getting the good ones and the bad ones.
oh boy, it's this is the part of the show where Dillon just makes noises because he's unable to express himself for the age he is.
Let me pull you back into it then.
Oh boy. Okay.
So he says later, a society works to the degree that it provides its members with the capacity to predict and control the events in their experimental field, or to the degree that it provides a barrier, protection from the unknown or unexpected. So that's what a society is trying to do, is let its members predict and control events and also protect them from the unknown or unexpected. Because that's what the frameworks do, right? That's like the point of the stories, as we talked about towards the beginning. And he's saying that that's what happens, that's what should happen at a societal level, is that like the stories and morals and stuff that we share tell us how to act in a protective and productive way.
Well, but is he not dismissing his own claim of the importance of investigating and discovering in the unknown?
No, he is, but it's saying that you can make the unknown predictable and controllable.
Well,
and when it talks about the barrier as protection from the unknown or unexpected, that's that apprenticeship idea that first you have to be protected from it so that you can explore it safely, and then you're more free.
It's like Skyrim.
As opposed to just go for it. Make that work.
Make that work?
Yeah, make that work.
Okay, remember in Skyrim, for everybody that listens who's obviously played Elder Scrolls V Skyrim.
By Bethesda Studios and Todd Howard. Shout out.
And everybody has played that, and everybody has been the Dragonborn. Specifically, everybody has played the Nord. and joined the Stormcloaks.
I've never been in Nord.
Really? That was the first, 11 characters I made. Anyways, when you go to the College of Winterhold, which is a wizard school, but obviously I don't need to say that everybody's played this game. It's been out for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Sarthal, right?
Okay.
And the professor goes with you. And the idea is that, you can explore Sarthal in the dungeons safely because there's a professor there who has, spells beyond your years. And they can just, insta-kill everything.
And then he does nothing?
And then he does nothing, and you go wander off and get killed anyways.
Right.
But, I think that's the idea of, as the apprentice, you're learning from the professor, you're taken into chaos, but it's a safe, controlled environment.
Yeah.
And that this leader has made it somewhat predictable.
Yeah.
But, I mean, obviously, you can always go wander off into a deep, dark dungeon and die 5 times by the Draugr Lord, but...
Well, that somehow connected to the path that I went down with this quote.
I can't tell if you're being facetious or not.
I'm not. No, that actually did line up.
I know it did.
You brought it back.
I know I did.
But well, here's mine, and you'll see why I'm so impressed that this lined up. Here's what I said.
Go ahead.
I said, that's why we are concerned about secular society, because it seems that there are fundamental questions that it does not answer and fundamental realities it denies. This means that the people who adhere to it are not able to properly address reality. So the culture that we have isn't actually protecting people.
Right.
Because it's ignoring some important stuff.
Yeah.
And somehow you...
With Skyrim.
Yeah.
As the spiffing Brit would say, Todd Howard, you genius, you've done it again. I'm so sorry for anybody who is wildly confused right now.
Yeah, this is just...
We just threw so many young jokes at this.
That's fine. That's what we're here for.
This is from the perspective of a young Christian man. 2 of them, to be specific. Welcome. If you don't know what Skyrim is, Google's going to become your new friend, and so it is Steam. I don't mean steam like the water, steam vapor.
There's another related thing to that I don't think I'm going to bring up, because
Okay.
I'd pretty much just be getting on a soapbox.
I like it when you get on a soapbox, to be honest.
I could, but...
You did that one time.
pretty
It was
political.
pretty awesome.
Do you want me to talk about the thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me copy the link to the website. Or to the study, I should say. I have a study.
Wait,
Okay.
is this your own personal study?
No.
My friend is so smart. He has his own personal study.
I really don't. Okay.
He actually does. It's a secret, and I'm learning his secret.
So he said that the group is the historical structure that humanity has erected between the individual and the terrible unknown.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just talking about over time these ideas have been tested by societies, and that's why they're in place now, is because these are the ones that worked.
Yeah.
And then so when you destroy those en masse, that is a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so,
secular culture, cough, cough. I'm
well,
still
so
sick.
here's what I said. It's the Carl Truman idea. This is why the new modern self is so detrimental.
Yeah.
Society is expected to conform to the desires of every individual, which means that it's not acting as a barrier, but as an encouraging entity in the face of the unknown. I think this can help to explain why we see transgender people are more likely to be depressed or commit suicide after their transition, because it is not good for them, but they don't have a society which will tell them that because individual expression is more important. And that's my soapbox, but I know that people might get mad at that, so I looked up a study to prove that those rates are higher post-transition.
I've seen so many studies.
Right, but I don't know if everyone has. But
go ahead.
Okay, so the study is called Long-Term Follow-Up of Transsexual Persons Undergoing Sex Reassignment Surgery Cohort Study in Sweden. It's by some people that I don't know the names of, but you could look up the name of it and find it. The conclusion that they came to was that persons with transsexualism after sex reassignment have considerably higher risks for mortality, sexual behavior, and psychiatric morbidity than the general population.
Yeah.
It says that our findings suggest that sex reassignment, although alleviating gender dysphoria, may not suffice as a treatment for transsexualism.
Well, okay. So here's the problem, is they're treating gender dysphoria by confirming it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like backwards as all get out.
Yeah. And
Like if you have a misconception about something, your community's job isn't to confirm your misconception. If you're like, every night aliens come to my bedroom and they beam the answer to when the world will end into my brain, you need to help them.
Right.
You need to have, I mean, I don't think you should just shout at people and tell them you're wrong and dumb. I think you need to understand where they're coming from and try to understand, and then just be honest with them and express why.
But like, I think the point is, well, first, for people that might say that that's just like a one-time article, the reason I chose this one was because they talk about a lot of the prior studies and the issues with a lot of those, that they could have been very biased because there are people that are self-reporting, and the people that were more likely to self-report are the people that were happy with the transition,
right?
Than people who were suicidal, especially if they did commit suicide, because you obviously can't report that.
Right.
You can't self-report that. But I think that whether or not you agree with us about this, the point is we see this as a dangerous thing that's happening, and like that's why we are invested. That's like why we're doing this.
Oh yeah, very much so. I like the reality of the situation. Is this an okay time for me to do my truth tangent?
Sure.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you had something better or something, but
there was a quote that reminded me of it, so I'll look for it.
So I had this really interesting realization, and maybe some of you listening are like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Duh, that's obvious. And some of you may be like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm sorry for all of you. But I had this really interesting realization over the weekend. And it was that we are all like individuals who have individual experiences. So at our cores, like we all have our own understood and perceptive truths. So somebody who runs for like their entire life, they've run for 20 years, they might have done it wrong, because there is a wrong way to run. They might have done it wrong for 20 years, but that's all they've done their entire life. Now, somebody else might come along with only 5 years of running experience, but has studied the idea of running and how to be a good runner and proper form and stuff. And they might come up to that person and be like, yo, you're running wrong. And they can say it as nice as they want or as rude as they want. It's irrelevant, because the person who's been running wrong for 20 years has an experienced truth that they've done it for so long and they've never had a problem with it. So it works. It's true to them. And the other person might have empirical data and studies and all this stuff, but how could you deny that person's experience? And I think this all ties back to like the transgender issue and gender dysphoria and stuff, because somebody has an experienced truth. And does that make them right or wrong? No. But the problem is when we confirm what we do know is wrong. If somebody's running so poorly that they're going to injure themselves, should you just let them keep doing it? I would say no. I think there's only so much you can do, but you definitely shouldn't just be like, no, you're right. Yeah, no. I mean, like, I know you're probably going to snap your ankles, but like, yeah, no. Keep doing that. No. I mean, you can only do so much. But to confirm it is the wrong thing. That's the last thing you should do. To express concern, to demonstrate what you've learned and understand, to, demonstrate and give support and caring and stuff. These are all great things. Even giving those things and then saying, I can't do anything about this situation. And I mean, if you're Christian, praying for them. If you're not Christian, maybe getting another friend or talking to somebody else about the thing. But the idea of confirming something that could be so detrimental to somebody's life and health is so backwards. And that's all we see nowadays. And it goes beyond the transgender thing. It goes into like ideologies and like believing like critical race theory that us as white people, we are awful, horrible sinners of blah, 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 blah. And like we owe an apology and we're in a huge debt to like everybody who's a minority is just such a backwards idea. Like, how does Jimmy, who's 5 and white, how are they in debt because of something their ancestors did? Wake up call. Everybody's ancestors did everything or something horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. The first slaves were white people. White people owned white people. Like, that's history, and it's tragic and it's awful. And neither one of us support that idea. But the reality is everybody's ancestors has done something awful because we all came from a very, I guess, savage idea.
For the sake of being historically accurate, the first slaves were not white people, because slaves have been a thing pretty much since the beginning of humans.
Yeah,
which would have been like when everyone was in like Fertile Crescent,
in
Africa and stuff, so they would have darker skin.
Okay. Well, I don't.
But that's mostly semantics.
That is semantics.
The point is that white people are not unique in owning slaves.
Yeah. Well, I guess my point was like the same group of people owned each other.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't even a difference. Like it was somebody from the same town. They owned each other. I mean, like, it doesn't make it right, but it doesn't mean that you have to magically pay for this debt that carries through your like family lineage or something. Like that doesn't track. That doesn't make sense. And to confirm that ideology is just so backwards. And that our society has gone so far to confirm all these ideologies that are so destructive is just so confusing to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really Carharted the situation again, didn't I?
That's fine. That's at least it was an exciting episode.
It was an exciting episode. We talked about Carhartt, and I got upset about Carhartt and people that wear it, and
so we'll end on a good note.
Okay. I like good notes.
So he says he's talking about like the limitations of explicitly having a moral system. He says the nature of much of what we think of as moral behavior is still therefore embedded in unconscious procedure. And I think that could be. Oh, and later he says the moral structure encoded in behavior is too complex to consciously formulate. And I think that this points to the like why the Bible is a narrative. Why God chose to make it a narrative is because we couldn't successfully apply some sort of explicit moral code, but we can by observing behaviors and applying a more abstract narrative. Because I've been wondering about like why did God make it a narrative instead of just telling us what to do?
Because you can abstract from it
more successfully than if it was just a set of rules.
Yeah.
Basically.
Well, I think that's why I was so blown away back in like September when we were going up to the Mesa, and I had like 4 pages of notes, and I was just like, man, we all listened to the same service, like the same one at the same time, sitting in the same part of the church next to each other, and we all got something not drastically different, but different for sure out of it. And I think it's just because not only can you abstract more efficiently, but like it'll speak to you. And this is something our mutual friend has said to me, that you can abstract different things and different points of your life and at different ages. And he says that he's read, parts of the Bible a couple times, and he's like, as he's getting older, he's just like, whoa, like I didn't even see that before. And I think that's like another huge important reason. Yeah. And it's something that I've said before, which is he had to write it for the times and for the times that will be. Yeah. So he couldn't just write it like rules. I mean, we have the 10 Commandments, but he doesn't write like everything.
And that's such a small part of the story.
Oh,
when you look at the vastness of it.
The Bible's huge. The Bible's massive, dude.
Yeah. So that's all I had.
Yeah.
I cut out some stuff, but it was less interesting, and I think it wouldn't have added much.
Sure.
So
I felt good about Carhartt.
Clearly.
And just putting out, you know, the reality and the gravity of the situation of like the impact secular culture has had
as we see it.
Yeah,
At least, yeah.
I think it's
because that's, I think, something we talked about previously too, is not during the podcast, but we as Christians who believe it is this way that we see it, we can't get mad at a lot of the people our age.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's all that they've ever been exposed to.
Yeah. And that's something that was like the realization that I had ultimately boiled down to like value systems. And then you pointed out that's like what we've been talking about, and I understood on a whole new level. But like the idea that we all have our own value systems, and living in a world where we're presupposing that people value God at the highest, what values could you have that are wrong? And I mean, the conclusion is generally no, because if you value God ultimately at the highest, you might have errors and value things that you shouldn't, and you'll learn from that in a perfect world. But and I just say that because our Christian value system is important, and we would disagree with somebody who values sex above a lot of things, but like you can apply that to a lot of people who aren't Christian. Like generally we have as people kind of similar value systems and structures and stuff, and while they're all not the same, secular culture is trying to shift that value system of like hard work and like looking to community and like building relationships and just being an individual who strives and is passionate about something outside of themselves and their own personal ideologies. If you value learning and you value the unknown and you value expanding and making your life rich, how could you be stuck in a world where everything you believe is true and only that is truly true? Like there isn't more than one truth.
Yeah.
There isn't a bunch of individual truths and stuff. And I know I said that we have our experienced truth and stuff, but that isn't the truth.
Yeah.
That's an experienced truth.
Good distinction.
Yeah. And we need to acknowledge that it can be wrong. It can very much be wrong. Sometimes you're not wrong, but other times you are.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You can be 50 and do something for 30 years and somebody else comes around who's 20 and is like, hey, did you try this? And you're like, no. Or you could be like, no, but I'll try it. And then maybe they're totally right.
Right.
It could be wrong, but I mean, the ultimate thing is like secular culture is telling us that what we say is true. And that's just not true. And it's a shame that people are unwilling to look at things beyond themselves.
Yeah. And we're not saying everyone's like that. That's not us, to be clear. But there are people that are undoubtedly like that. Yeah.
I think it's just a shame because life is a lot richer when you acknowledge fault and acknowledge.
Learn.
Yeah. And learn. Yeah. Learning.
Learning's epic.
Yeah. I mean, we both learn very different things on very different levels, but like, I don't think there's a day that goes by that you and me aren't like pursuing understanding or learning something.
Right.
Whether you're reading a book or I'm watching a YouTube video, it's usually in the pursuit of learning.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a good episode.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good episode. Oh, not to brag, but we make a good podcast.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Next week is Christmas episode.
Yeah.
Cool. Not during the time of the recording of this episode. That would be very confusing.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. Pretend it's cool. And we have to get Christmas stuff. We have to. We have to celebrate the birth of Jesus, or at least the day after it. Maybe not when we record, but when it comes out. Thanks for hanging in with us, everyone. I know the videos have been a little scattered and kind of off. Evan's finishing up finals, and he's part of my my video crew now because I can't do it all alone. And my girlfriend's also in the same boat, finishing finals, and makes videos just a little scattered. But
Yes.
we appreciate patience with that, as we are all just very young adults. Well, thanks for listening to this episode. I hope that you got something good out of it, at least one thing good. If not, we're just entertained.
Yes.
Anything else to add?
No, I talked myself out. I'm good.
Okay. Well, thanks for staying tuned. Thanks for coming back for another week. And we'll see you again next week for a special Christmas episode. It'll be super special because we'll wear hats.
Yeah, that's about it.
Maybe we'll put lights up or something. I don't know.
We'll see.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope to see you in the next episode of Lessons Learned. Bye.
See you.